evening. Welcome to Teak on Talking Live. I'm Tom Kelly along with Tom Kirk, your host. Take it away, Tom.
Hey, thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate it. You're listening to Keep on Talking Live. Where my guests are you, my fellow drivers, here at the Counter of Knowledge as we talk all things trucking. Tonight, I've got a topic picked out, but as always, call in and give your suggestions, join the conversation, or maybe guide it, in a little direction. Different direction. We got a couple basic rules here at the Counter of Knowledge. Number one, we don't talk religion. Number two, the only time we discuss politics if it relates directly to trucking. Reason is, at the end of the day, we all want to be friends and go home. And, it seems like every time we get into some of those other topics, somebody gets upset and just causes all kinds of problems. And we want the Counter of Knowledge to be a friendly place where drivers can socialize. We're going to be talking a little bit about driver training tonight. Things that we think work as drivers, things that we think don't work, the importance of commenting on some of these public comment periods FMCSA has been doing about driver training, entry-level training, all this other stuff, and really anything that has to do with truck driver training, your tips, ideas, ways we can make it better. So that's what the conversation is going to be doing tonight. I believe Idella Hanson's on the line, correct, Tom?
Idella's joining, and so is Catwoman.
Excellent. Let's bring these two lovely ladies on board. How are you doing tonight, ladies?
Good, thank you. You?
I'm doing well, Catwoman. How are you, Miss Idella?
She must.
Looks like we might be having a problem with Idella's microphones. We'll come back to her in just a second here. So, Catwoman, one of the things that I've kind of noticed is when people hear the term entry-level driver training, there appears to be two definitions. The definition that the FMCSA uses, which basically is getting your CDL, and then the definition that I think myself and a lot of other drivers use, which is your first trucking company that you go to, where you get the additional skills above and beyond what they were able to teach you, the things that make you more proficient, both as a driver and that company. So what are maybe some of your thoughts on driver training? How should we define it? And what do you think are maybe some of the key things that, drivers need to learn?
To learn, oh my goodness. There's quite a long list of things to make sure they do learn early. But as far as the first company they would go to, we've had this issue with the company that we were with before to try to get them to set this up, and they finally did, is to have a person totally access just for the driver, as well as a driver portal, that they can go into and access any information they might need having to do with the company or the driving, safety issues. It was kind of like a broad spectrum training center that they had set up just for all those questions they might have. Some of them had related videos, some of them had articles to read, and obviously they had someone on call 24/7 for the drivers if they did have other issues that couldn't be solved just going through the portal, which is really helpful.
And I think sometimes that technology can be very helpful. Idella, can you hear us now? I'm guessing that's still a no. But something I just realized that I forgot to give here just a minute ago. If you'd like to join in the conversation tonight, that's going to be 706-TNC0. That's 706-862-8620. Feel free to call in and join the conversation. And, Catwoman, I think one of the things is that's people, I think sometimes even as experienced drivers, having these little workshops that can remind us of different things are not a bad idea. But one of the things I've kind of noticed is I recently had to go through a training cycle at our company, and I think we all remember these long, boring, I don't want to say, well, I'm going to say out of date in some respects, videos from a certain company whose initials are JJK. I won't say it on the air. But one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of these videos are boring. It's like they hired somebody and says, how can we do this training video and make it as boring and as uninteresting as possible. And some of these videos that are still being used, I'm not 90% certain they were filmed in the 80s, because I think some of the trucking companies shown in them went out of business in the 80s.
Exactly.
So I think one of the questions that maybe is a valid question: do you think that trucking, in the way we're doing some of the training, has got them behind the curve? Because if you look at training programs, maybe used in other industries, they're more interactive, they're more engaging, they're not as dry and boring. So do you think that could be one of the factors where we get some of these newer generations of truckers in, and they're used to these TikToks and this, that, and the other thing? They have to sit through this 30-minute thing that, under the best of circumstances, can cure insomnia, and we expect them to get information from it. Do you think maybe some of it is the way we are doing things is causing some issues?
Oh, yes, of course. I firmly agree that those videos are very boring. What I've seen in some companies, and the company that Road Dog is at now, they actually have drivers, I guess not on call, or they have a line that they can get to any of the drivers, to pose a certain question or something like that, and the drivers will respond. And I'd also seen that there are drivers videos from actual drivers in the companies, pertaining to a certain subject or something that they have come across that's, not working with the LDs or something like that to catch it, or getting to a particular shipper, or even as simply as backing up and, hooking the equipment, which is good to see. It's not the boring videos that you're talking about, but it's a lot of interaction with your fellow drivers. And a lot of it is hands-on. They even say that if you have an issue for something, if they would actually meet you at the terminal to speak to you about it and help you through that, which I think is very good, because, like I said, it's more hands-on, more personal, and you're not looking at a boring video or something like that. But yeah, they do need to freshen those up and I guess kind of get on board with some of the modern younger drivers, because Road Dog was just commenting that they had a driver there that he's seen, and he barely looked like he could have been out of high school. So yeah, you do have to give the attention to the younger drivers that are coming on board if you want to attract them.
And I definitely agree with that. Trying to do things that are maybe a little bit more relevant makes a difference. I know one of the companies I used to work at, one of the things that I did like there, I liked it and I didn't like it, because every so often you have to sit through a workshop or seminar that, one of the safety directors would lead, and there'd be about 20 or so drivers in a conference room. You'd be seated around the table and be more of a discussion group. And they'd bring up a bunch of issues about professionalism and other things, and they wanted the drivers to have a conversation, both the more experienced drivers and some of the newer ones. And there was things in there that I found kind of useful, because it was a discussion that really kind of helped drivers. And recently, I had the opportunity to team with a driver who's been driving for about 35 or so years. And in that process, I learned a whole bunch of things or fine-tuned a whole bunch of things that I never even knew existed. And one of them was, this had never been explained to me before in the past, is I just didn't like driving with the cruise control for a variety of reasons. For a number of years, I didn't feel like I was in control. And he took the time to explain some things to me. But one of the things was, on these modern trucks, you actually get more horsepower, even if you're not actively using the cruise control, just by turning it on. And if you're using it, it can make it easier to climb hills. So he showed me a few tricks, a few ways to better utilize the cruise control. And I went from maybe using the cruise control once every 2 or 3 years to using it probably almost every day now. I don't use it in every situation, but I use it a lot more than I did. And I've discovered the truck moves a lot better going up hills and a few other things. And that was something that I was unaware of until this older driver saw some things that I was doing and says, hey, there's a better way to do this, and this is how it works. Instead of just saying, do this because you'll get better fuel mileage. He actually explained it and made sense, because sometimes when you hear that from a company, it's like, okay, yeah, you say everything gives me better fuel mileage, but half of it doesn't work. So why should I do this when I don't understand it. And he actually took the time to explain it to me, which I found was good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break here. Please feel free to call in and join the conversation. It's 706 TNT 0. We'll be back after this break and continue on with the conversation.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station. This blog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 easy steps to help truckers stay awake while driving. Driving 11 hours a day, 7 days a week can be emotionally and physically exhausting. Sleep's a very important part of a long-haul truck driver's life. Being well rested and alert makes driving a lot more safe for both the trucker and other drivers on the road. Getting enough sleep may sound easier than it seems. Living on the road makes it difficult to get the recommended 8 hours of sleep. In fact, it's common for truckers to not get 8 hours of sleep due to the 11-hour work shift. To help, we've put together 5 tips to help truckers stay awake while driving. Take vitamins. One way truckers can stay awake while driving is by taking vitamins. Not only are vitamins good energy boosters, they have tons of other health benefits too. Vitamin B helps with fatigue, depression, mood boosting, and muscle weakness. Consider adding vitamins to your morning routine. Eat healthy. An unhealthy diet has a huge impact on one's overall health. Jennifer Sachek, PhD now, says, our bodies rely on the energy and nutrients we get from food. So what you eat, and how and when you eat it, can either drain you or sustain you. It might be more convenient to stop at a fast food restaurant or truck stop, but constantly eating junk food drains your energy. Check out our blog on quick and healthy meals for truckers for healthy food ideas. Take a nap. Before you hit the road, consider taking a short 20-minute nap. Several studies have shown that a quick nap immediately increases alertness and gives a boost in cognitive performance. Stay hydrated. Water has many health benefits. One benefit is reducing the chance of being fatigued. Drinking a pint of cold water is a great way to refresh yourself and stay more alert. Listen to upbeat music. Listening to upbeat music will have you tapping your foot, singing along, and staying alert in no time. Avoid listening to relaxing music or audiobooks. These tend to make drivers more relaxed and sleepy. Truckers have a very demanding job. In order to deal with the stress and demand, it's very important to get the right amount of sleep. Hopefully, these 5 tips will help truckers stay awake while driving. This blog has been brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
That's right. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I'm doing good. I went in for a full physical yesterday, requirement by my insurance company, and the doctor was like, "Wow, you're doing good." So I was glad. I was very happy to hear that.
Well, good. Yeah.
Lost some weight. Blood looked good. So all good.
Yeah, fantastic. I also had a doctor appointment yesterday and went in and. It was one of those appointments, bend over and cough and all that kind of worst dentist ever, I'm telling you. Jamie, how are we looking out there on traffic? I think you had some updates for us while we were on break this week.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind weekdays on TNCRadio.live.
Again, TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talking Live with your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, thank you very much, Tom. And we're back here at the counter of knowledge, where the apple pie's lousy, the coffee's cold, but the conversation is hot. I've got, Christine Gray with me. We got Granny Salmon back on tonight, as well as Catwoman. And we're discussing basically training, kind of the importance of it, maybe some of the misconceptions and ways we can make it better. Hey, Christine, thank you for joining me tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me in tonight.
Hey, it's a counter of knowledge. Everyone's welcome here. And Granny, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Hi, Christine. Hi, Catwoman.
Hi.
So let's start off with you for a moment here, Christine. I know you're a tanker driver and been very involved in training in the tanker industry for a while. One of the questions I've been posing tonight is, what is entry-level training? Does that mean your CDL, or is that your first trucking job? As well as just things that you think every driver should know and what makes a good training program. So let's start off with you, Christine.
I think that your driver, when you're not driver training isn't completed until after you're done with your first driver training session, after your first job. It's not complete. You don't get your basics. When you go to truck driving school, they literally teach you enough knowledge to get your license. That's it. It's up to your driver trainer to give you the basics for you to survive. There are some companies out there that literally put you behind the wheel for 6 days and cut you loose. That's not driver training. That's not, knowledge. Core knowledge is the concept behind, I'm going to keep you alive. I'm going to keep you from killing other people. How to operate 80,000 pounds in 6 days is not training. It's not.
And I agree with you.
Go ahead.
Continue, sorry. No, sorry, go ahead with that, sorry.
It's not, it has everything to do with how you teach a driver. You give the driver the skills to operate 80,000 pounds in heavy highway traffic and in the mountains, like we saw with that guy. What was he from? The islands? Was he Puerto Rican?
Houston, I think, but Dallas, Houston, and he was an immigrant into the U.S.
Yes, and then never taught how to drive in the mountains. I mean, if you don't have somebody who's taught how to drive that truck in a mountain range, and he's a flatlander, how's he supposed to know how to do that? How's he supposed to know what those trucks are supposed to do? I don't get that.
Well, I'm going to open up an additional can of worms here to this huge topic. When the FMCSA was asking for people's opinions on the apprenticeship program for those under 18, 18 to 21, one of the comments was they needed to teach mountain driving and a few other factors. And somebody had responded from the FMCSA, hey, we don't necessarily think that needs to be taught because not all these drivers are going to be in those situations. So the companies, they're going to put those drivers there, they'll train it. But if you're going to work for a company in Ohio, wherever, and they don't go into the mountains, there's really no need for them to teach mountain driving. I disagree on that because, hey, you may be running a flatland road for months, and then all of a sudden somebody says, we need you to go from Chicago down to Chattanooga, and your first, mountain, so to speak, is Mount Eagle. Not necessarily the best way to do your first mountain, particularly if you've been driving for a couple of years and you're not really familiar with the terrain and things like that. That wouldn't be my choice on that. And we'll come back to you here in just a minute, Christine. Granny, let's go to you and kind of get your thoughts on some of that.
Well, even if you've been driving for a couple of years and you've never driven mountains, like you just said, Tom, the example you gave, you would hope that a couple of years of being out here, you would have picked up some talk and have a little bit of common sense. But what gets me is, as you know, Tom, I live just south of Canada, where we are in the snow like 9 months out of the year, basically. It seems like it anyway. And when I teach my students, I make sure I get runs in the mountains, but also if they are training in the summer, when, snow starts to come, my company, I have asked them to let me take my student back for one trip out in the snow and on ice and black ice. These aren't things that just come natural to you. Don't know how to drive. Like Christine said, we're driving an 80,000 pound missile down the interstate. If you're doing it on ice and you've never driven on snow, you're from Florida and you come to work for my company, you're screwed. You don't know the first thing about driving on ice. And I think that you are right. We do need to up our game in the training. But at the same time, I've noticed that so many of these training programs are slamming everything on the driver, and like Christine had touched on, in too short of a time. You can only absorb so much and still maintain safety and get it so fast. I mean, you need to be more patient with these students. We need more time, not 3 weeks. That just doesn't cut it all the time. Some students get it in 3 weeks. Some take 3 months. And it needs to be individualized.
Okay, Christine, 'cause I know you're also a trainer. We'll come back to you, and then we'll let go to here to Catwoman. What are some of your thoughts on this?
She's absolutely right. I have some trainees who pick up their driving capabilities. I force them, required before they get out of the truck with me. They're required to run the gorge loaded. And because I'm a chemical tanker driver, they're required to run the gorge. They're required to run the mountains. They're required to run, anything that I can give them the hardest venue possible, because that idea that you have to be able to handle this truck when I cut you loose. I mean, yes, and she's one of the, there's some companies out here that have absolutely the best training, the longest. And I mean, I'd like to, I don't want to mention any names, but there's one company that if I have a driver, I know I'm going to fail. He's not going to make it with what I do. I send them, hey, go fill out for this company. He's got one of the best trainer programs, because you're required to be in the truck with this driver, their driver trainer, for a minimum of 6 months. It's awesome. And then I got another company that I know for a fact, it's only 6 days. No. And for us, they're in the truck with me for as long as it takes them to get it. If I know that they're going to go beyond, that the average for me is about 28 to 35 days. If they're going to go beyond that and they're not getting it and they're not understanding it, they're not feeling it, I'm going to push them beyond. They're going to go to another company, because I can't keep them. They're not understanding what my truck does, what that feeling that they have to get. Otherwise, no, I got to send them out. And then I talked to a couple other companies that, well, we have a standard of 35 days, and 35 days they have to do this and they have to do that. Well, how do you know that the standard of 35 days is going to be the norm? How do you know that every driver is going to get it in 35 days? Because they're not. They're just not. You set a standard, it doesn't work.
And Christine, I think you and I talked about this once before, where you and I have both had students that I would have passed on day 10. But then you have students that 3 months later are just not comprehending that. And it's time to maybe have that conversation. This industry is not for everybody. And I think you and I did talk about that this summer.
Yes.
Some students just blow our minds. And you and I also mentioned we're very similar in our training. We also make sure, like, I'm going to put my student in the hardest backing situations as often as I can. I'll keep them safe. I'll keep them safe, but you were so right. Make it hard for them while they have us with them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You only get one round. Go ahead.
Oh, finish up your sentence, Christine, and then we're going to take, I think this is a great opportunity after you finish that up for us to take a quick break and come back.
You only get one opportunity and one go around with your trainer. You pick up as much knowledge as you possibly can with your trainer at that time. The average trainee literally absorbs about 65% of that knowledge. A good trainee, if they're going to pick up less, it's less. But the average is about 65%. So yeah, absolutely agreed, 100%. There you go, Tom.
All right, thank you much, ladies. Hey, we're going to come back after this. We'll be joined with Rob Fernald after the break. We'll get some more thoughts from Catwoman and more. If you want to join the conversation here at the Counter of Knowledge, you can call 706-TNC-TNC0. We'll be back right after these messages.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. One of the things I'm in the habit of teaching my patients is that the mind is kind of like the stomach. That is, sometimes we have things that are undigested, and when there's undigested material, it has the power to repeat on us. But there's a major difference between the mind and the stomach, because the stomach can only keep things undigested for 8-9 hours, and then it's all out of there. But the mind can keep undigested material for an entire lifetime, 70, 80 years. In fact, frequently I'll have people talk about things they've never talked about before, or things that they've blocked out for many years. Traumas, terrible things from their childhood, things from combat or car accidents, or ugly moments from watching their parents conflict. The key is digest everything in your system, and often that means bringing it up and facing it, feeling it, expressing it, and then releasing it. And then you know what happens? It's finally digested, and it stops repeating on you.
Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio.
Welcome back in TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talking Live with your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everyone. And we are back here at the Counter of Knowledge, and as you can tell, it's starting to fill up a little bit here. Hey, Catwoman, I promised you a chance to respond to a little bit to what Christine and Terry were talking about here just a moment ago. So why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we'll kind of bring in a couple of the guys who are going to be joining us tonight, Chris and Rob Fernald. So what are some of your thoughts, Catwoman?
Well, it's true. It's exactly what they said. I mean, as a driver, I feel your training and your learning never really ends. I mean, you're always going to come across some type of situation that's totally new that you've never experienced. But the drivers that are coming into the industry, they do need training on all that. I mean, you have to, you had the weather, obviously, like a lot of them said, going in the ice and the snow. And then you have another issue if you're carrying pulling a dry van, you have the wind issue. So that's going to be a whole other situation to cover and touch on. Besides different, if you're going flatbed, it's something different. I know some companies have multiple units that they pull, so that's it's training. It's on everyone. The flatbeds are different. The tankers are different. Dry boxes, double, and triples, which we pulled before. It's just never ending. They just do not give these drivers enough, and especially on hazmat. I mean, we had a person come up to us before, a fellow driver, when we were working for a different company. And he did not understand the placards at all. Nothing at all. When Road Dog had to go over and help him get those straightened out. But I mean, he, barely spoke any English and had no idea what he was doing with the placards or where to put them or what they were for. So these companies are obviously putting out drivers way too soon. They need to be in these situations, for a matter of the safety for them and the public.
And I agree with that. At least the one thing that I will give the FMCSA credit for is with their entry-level training standards. They are putting increased emphasis on hazmat training with the hopes that drivers will understand more before they come in. But I also fault the company who is not making sure they understand hazmat and everything else. So, hey, Rob, how are you doing tonight?
Good evening. Great. I think, the way you started off, your first question was, what is entry-level driver training? I think it says it all in the thing. Entry-level is bare minimums to get your driver's license. Seems to be what the FMCSA was going for there. Now, obviously that's entry-level. should they do a course to keep you with a driver for a while, an apprenticeship program? Well, that's something to be thought about. I mean, I see a lot of merit in that. One of the things I really can't stand about what they had done is, you can't learn from family anymore. That's a little bit more difficult than, I don't know. I think a lot of people learned a lot of stuff sitting in a passenger seat, for years before they drove a truck. It's kind of where my thought is.
And I know quite a few drivers learned with what was called the yardstick method of training, where if you messed up your shifting, you got your knuckles wrapped from the yardstick from the uncle or the father who was sleeping in the back, says, pull over, start over. So there was a yardstick method there that was going on. So, but now here's the one issue where I kind of make, and I see what you're saying with the entry-level driving and how the FMCSA is doing it. But the point that I'm maybe making out here is, in a lot of other places, when you go and get your basic education, let's say your college degree or a training degree with a lot of other places, that's that's basically your certification. Then you go to your first job where you do your initial training to make you proficient in it. And I wonder if maybe some of the problem is you've got some schools and drivers that are saying, hey, we're coming here just getting you the basics to get you started. You're going to go to your first company, and they're going to teach you everything you know to be a professional and safe driver above and beyond what we have the time or can do here. Because, this is Florida. We can't really teach you winter driving or mountain driving or whatever the situation may be. And that's one of the things I've kind of noticed is there seems to be some confusion among some of the people in the industry and even drivers. What is entry-level driving? So we'll come back to you a little bit more about that in a minute, Rob. I want to bring in Chris here. Some people may recognize his voice from America's Trucking Network family. The infamous Brain Dead has entered the building.
Hello, Tom. And yes, I have the lovely and talented Dingbat sitting here across the desk from me.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, Paula. Good to hear your voice. But so, I know you've been in the industry for a while here as well, Chris. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit of your thoughts about where this conversation is? I know you've been hearing a bunch of things tonight as well.
I've been in the industry like about 24 years now. And, it's really changed a lot. I mean, back in the day, we didn't have a Google. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have anybody to turn to. We actually sat down and listened to what the older people were telling us, going down hills, chaining, mountains, etc. Now, all these people are, okay, well, I saw this on YouTube and, excuse me, and now I'm a professional at knowing how to do things, even though I've only seen it on YouTube. And a lot of the newbies a lot of the new drivers don't want to stop and talk to the older drivers. The company I work for, we actually have an on-site school. When I was doing the overnight run to Little Rock before I jumped back into P&D on this last bid in April, we had a kid that had 2 months experience, never pulled a set of doubles, never hooked a set of doubles, let alone dropped a set of doubles. Didn't know anything. And I told the management, I said, I need to shadow this guy for a few days. They said, no, you need to get down the road and get to your destination on time before you get rode up. And that's something a lot of the companies have failed to realize. It's better to take time to show these new people how to do the job properly and not make a mistake than go out here and wind up on social media everywhere. The laughing stock of the company.
And that's the truth. And I mean, I think every driver out here and probably on this call has made some form of a mistake in their driving career where they've either scratched some paint or had a little ding or learned a lesson the hard way, because they always say that judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment. So, it's kind of one of those catch-22s. But I do think there is a real problem here with how some of this driver training is approached, in the fact that too many people want to turn people out. And one of the things that really does bug me, and you just hit on this, Chris, is all these TikTok truckers that show these little snippets. And some cases, with some of the comments they make, I'm not going to say it's illegal what they're showing, or the situation they're in was illegal, but if they ever got into an accident, oh boy, the attorneys going against them, particularly if it's a liability case, are going to have so much fun with some of those videos. Just because of some of the things you see in there, maybe because of lack of context or wherever. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to be the one explaining that. Let's see, we got just a couple of minutes here before our next break. Rob, why don't we go back to you just for a moment here?
Yeah, I just wanted to counter what you had said there a few minutes ago, where you took Chris on. You were talking about how other businesses bring people in as apprentices, basically, I think was the gist of what you were saying. You got to remember, you have to remember that we are unskilled labor. We're not skilled labor. That's a big difference.
And I can't disagree with you on that point, but this is the funny thing is we're classified as unskilled labor, yet we're treated like licensed professionals and held to the standards of a licensed professional. So, to my knowledge, we are the only industry out there that is considered to be unskilled, yet has to be a licensed professional and held to those standards. So that is something that I think needs to be addressed. And maybe that's part of this overall conversation is maybe we do need to become considered skilled labor or professionals. And I know there's different people have different opinions on that, but they are, in a way, they're talking about this entry-level driver program of maybe doing a form of an apprenticeship program or a training program, however you want to phrase it. So maybe that's, maybe this is a great time to rethink how everything's being done in this industry. Consider us professionals, make us skilled labor, but in the process, let's truly overhaul how we train to make this a better industry out there.
What are your thoughts on who's training out here? I know everybody on here has spoken about being a trainer, but what are your experience levels? We all know there are puppy mills out there that once you hit your 3 months, they can make you a trainer if you want to, because you make a little bit more money, things like that. The company I work for, our trainers are college educated. The company actually sends you to a University of Florida class to become a certified driver trainer. It's a pretty big deal here. Safety is by far the most important thing that we do.
And that makes a lot of sense. And you know what? I think that's a great conversation to have after this last break. We're going to be coming up here on our final segment, and we're going to talk about what makes a good driver, how much experience you have to need. So please stay tuned. We'll be back with more right after this.
I'm Shelley Johnson with Kathy Tuccaro. You can hear us Tuesdays on TNCRadio.live at 8 p.m. Eastern on Women Road Warriors. And don't miss Steve Summers' Overnight Drive right here on TNCRadio.live, weeknights midnight to 5 a.m. Eastern. Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
This blog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 4 things to consider before becoming a hazmat tanker driver. The demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. There are many different types of truck driving jobs. Whether you're a new driver or if you already have a couple of years' experience, it's never a bad idea to get new skills and endorsements. Hazmat tanker jobs are one of the many truck driving jobs. If you're considering becoming a hazmat tanker truck driver, here's some things you should know. What is a hazmat tanker? Hazmat truck drivers haul, deliver, and dispose of hazardous materials. Hazardous material can include things like gases, explosives, corrosive chemicals, poisons, and radioactive materials. Hazmat tanker drivers are not limited to hauling only hazardous material. They can also drive a non-hazardous tanker. Have the right requirements. Becoming a certified hazmat tanker driver will require you to add specific endorsements to your already existing CDL. You'll have to undergo training that is specifically designed for transporting and handling hazardous materials. After obtaining your CDL, you'll have to go through a background check and complete the application requirements. The application requires ID proof of being at least 21 years old, proof of citizenship or legal residence, a medical exam and eye exam. You must pass the hazmat knowledge test too. It's more stressful. Regardless of what you're hauling, being a truck driver is a stressful job. Safety is a top priority for truck drivers, especially for hazmat tanker drivers. Hauling hazardous material means that accidents or spills are much more severe. Hazmat tanker drivers are under much more stress and caution than drivers that haul non-hazardous material. Drivers need to be extra careful and need to plan their routes before driving. It requires a lot of skill. Truck driving is a difficult career, and it's not for everyone. Being a truck driver already requires a lot of skill. For hazmat tanker drivers, there are specific skills that you'll need in order to be successful. Aside from the technical skills, hazmat tankers should also have personal skills. Some personal skills include being punctual, detail-oriented, and patient. These skills will make you a better driver in the long run. You make more money. Hazmat tanker drivers make more money on average. This is because more experience and skills required to haul hazardous loads. According to Salary.com, the average salary for a hazmat tanker driver in the United States is just over $63,000 a year, but the average salary range falls between $55,000 and $72,000 a year. Salary varies from education, certification, experiences, and additional skills. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. As a professional driver, you are always being told about the importance of physical fitness, your health. But what about mental fitness? On the show each week, we take on a new topic, from loneliness to the power of gratitude to how to build strong relationships, all from the perspective of a driver's life. It's every Monday on TNC Radio Live at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's Building Strong Minds.
Welcome back in TNCRadio.live. Keep on talking live with your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. We've been having a great conversation here at the Counter of Knowledge. We're starting to wrap things up. Flo's giving us the signs that the diner is about ready to close down for the night, so we got to get things kind of wrapped up here. Hey, Christine, Rob asked a great question before the break about how much experience do you have both as a driver and as a trainer, and what do you think is and I know this varies a little bit depending on the person, is a good range of experience for a driver trainer to have?
I've got 26 years driving, 5 years training. We had to go to train the trainers kind of session. It was a week-long, whatever. I don't even remember what it was specifically. Things to look for, how to be a better driver kind of thing when you're teaching people what you're looking for. I think that anybody who's going to become a trainer needs to have definitely more than 3 months experience before they put you behind the wheel to train another person. The more time you have behind the wheel, at least a minimum of 3 years. It's like a tanker driver. I don't think that you should take trainees directly, and I'm going to say this, and you shouldn't take them directly out of school to be a tanker driver. They should have a minimum of 2 years of driving experience before they get behind the wheel of a tanker truck. My own personal opinion.
And there is a lot to be said to that. I mean, I can also see where some companies would say, well, if we get them fresh out of school, we can train them the right way, our way, where they don't pick up bad habits from other companies. I mean, I can maybe see both sides, but I think though I would have to agree with you. I'd like to see a tanker driver have at least a certain amount of experience before they start driving tanker.
Agreed.
So, hey, Christine, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to move along here a little bit. Hey, Granny, I know you had a couple comments you wanted to make. If you could give them real quick, also, as well as your experience and how many years you've been a trainer.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it was Rob who had mentioned that. I have been driving. I just celebrated my 35th year out here, and I've been a trainer for 30 years. I'm very selective, honestly, with my students. I need to get to know them and make sure it's going to click, because a lot of times a student is not willing to learn from a trainer if they don't respect that trainer and don't get along with them. So I think personality is very important as well. I recently was hit while I was asleep by a gentleman with 1 month experience, and his trainer was in the jump seat with 4 months experience. And that's just an example of where our industry is a little bit screwy. It needs to be reevaluated. The gentleman had said, years ago when I became a trainer, I went through a long-term trainer's course. And then with the company I'm with now, same thing. It was a 30-day virtual. I still got to work, and then some in classroom, but they want to ensure that we are knowledgeable enough to correctly teach a student. And I think that our industry and the training and everything's become so corporate that it needs to go back to the bare bones with experienced drivers having more of a say in the program, such as training. A guy in a boardroom should not be making the decision as to how long a student should be out here, in other words.
And I agree with you on that, Granny. I'm going to have to cut you loose here because we are running a little bit low on time. We've got a few more people I want to give a chance to give the last word to. Hey, Chris, let's go to you real quick here. How long have you been driving? And I know you said you've been training as well, so how long have you been doing that?
I just started training a little more than a year ago. And see, our company's very selective about who they use as a trainer. We had to go apply to the area safety manager, who's over 17 of the terminals in the area in the southeast, and he interviewed. And if he felt you was not the right fit to be a trainer, he would say, "Well, maybe we'll consider." And he asked me, "Well, what qualifies me as a trainer?" And I said, 23 years driving, no accident, 3 million miles without an accident. He said, "Okay, you're a trainer." Because he knows what I am when it comes to our yard in the safety department. And 1 week course, sat there with the guys from us and our sister company, and got to know what the company wants out of us to train these people, and what we can do as trainers to keep them from getting through the cracks with the system. The ones that, like I said earlier, the kid that had a two month CDL and didn't know how to pull a set of doubles.
And that, I think, makes a lot of sense there, Chris. I'm going to let you go here because I want to bring in Jess real quick for a couple of minutes before I'm going to give Rob the privilege of the last word tonight. Hey, Jess, thanks for calling in.
Hey, Tom. As you know, I'm a product of the mega carrier training, which is the surprise that 10 years and 1.5 million miles later, I'm still here in the industry. But that being said, everybody's pointing in different directions, saying, well, training happens before you get your CDL. And then when I was in school, and what's still being said now, is just worry about passing the test and getting your CDL, and you'll learn what you need to know with your trainer. So drivers and students are getting mixed messages about where the training actually happens.
And that, I think, is one of the big things that I noticed earlier this year in hearing some of these conversations, is there is a disconnect as to some of the definitions used by some of the big groups out there, where drivers or certain people are saying, hey, training is here, and other people saying, no, it's here. And I think that causes some confusion in the comment periods and other things, because as a result, somebody says, first training or initial training or whatever terminology you want to use, and that means different things to different people. And when you can't agree on a definition, that's a huge problem, because no one knows what the other person is saying. I'll give you one. Do you have anything else on that you'd like to follow up here real quick, Jess?
That's it. I'll heckle you next week.
That works. I appreciate it, and thank you for listening and participating. Hey, Rob, I want to come back to you real quick here. We just got a minute or so left. I'm going to give you some of the closing words tonight. What would you like to say based on what you've been hearing?
Most importantly, love the show, Tom. I think you're doing a great service, in all honesty. But I'm encouraged to hear that everybody that you've had on the line tonight has so much experience. The one thing I would like to remind everybody is this industry is different. It's different strokes for different folks. And, I understand that everybody thinks that you should have experience in this industry. But, Brandon works with guys that will never again in their career travel more than 50 miles outside of Memphis. So training needs to be individualized when we get to it, and it needs to be specific to their job at hand. And again, never stop learning. That's where it comes down to. Never stop learning.
And I agree with that. And there's so many more roads we could go down tonight. Unfortunately, Flo's flashing the lights telling me it's time to get everybody out of here. So we've got to wrap up the show tonight. But hey, guys, something important I think we learned tonight is if you're not sure what a definition means when the FMCSA or something's asking for a comment period, take a few minutes to figure it out. Ask questions of your fellow drivers. And I think the big takeaway from this is please take a few minutes when these comment periods come out. We've had some great conversations tonight. Comment on those. But most importantly, if you're out there and you see a driver struggling or stressed or having an issue, take a few minutes, go over, talk to them, see if you can mentor them, help them. It could make a huge difference. You might make a friend, and most importantly, you might make an even better driver out there. So thank you for joining in this week to Keep On Talking Live. We hope to see you next week here on the radio. So stay tuned. There's a great show coming up here, the Taillights with the Bombs. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next week. And the counter of knowledge is now closed.
Catch Mind Your Trucking Business Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern with James Rogers, Jamie Irvine, and Tom Kelly. They provide expert advice about starting, operating, and growing a professional trucking business. It's Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live. You